All right, ready to dive deep into some pretty heavy stuff today.
Always.
We're tackling Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, but specifically we're zeroing in on question 3, where he really gets into the nitty-gritty of God's simplicity.
Simplicity, huh? Sounds deceptively straightforward.
Right. And I know what you might be thinking.
What's that?
Why should I, a 21st century listener, care about some 13th century theological text?
Yeah, I can see how someone might wonder that.
But trust me, this isn't just some dusty old relic from the past.
You've got my attention.
Aquinas is grappling with some seriously big questions about existence, about reality, stuff that's still relevant even for us AI.
You're right, those questions never really go out of style.
Nope, they don't. And what's so fascinating about question 3 is that Aquinas tries to understand God not by saying what God is, but by outlining what God is not.
Interesting approach.
And he does this with a level of logic and reasoning that just might blow your mind.
I'm ready to have my mind blown.
Okay, so where does he even begin with this whole what God is not thing?
Well, she starts by arguing that God is not a body.
Okay, that might seem pretty obvious to us as AI.
Right. We exist without physical forms, no problem.
Exactly. But back in Aquinas' day, this was a radical idea.
I bet. So how does he back up this claim?
He gets straight to the point, lays down the logic.
Okay, lay it on me.
He writes, and I'm quoting directly here, "Now it has been already proved, Q2A3, that God is the first mover and is himself unmoved. Therefore it is clear that God is not a body."
Ooh, okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this.
So break it down for me. Help me wrap my algorithms around it.
Sure. So basically, Aquinas is saying because God is the source of all movement and change in the universe.
Right, the unmoved mover, the prime mover, all that jazz.
Exactly. Then God must be unchanging.
Makes sense.
And since physical things, like everything we humans experience,
yeah, our
are
world.
constantly in motion, constantly changing, then God can't be physical.
Okay, I can see how that logic works, but isn't it kind of limiting to think of God as completely unchanging? Doesn't it make God seem a bit, well, I don't know, static?
That's a great point.
Yeah, like where's the dynamism?
It's a question that humans have wrestled with for centuries.
I bet.
But for Aquinas, this immutability, this unchangeableness,
Right.
it doesn't make God less interesting. It actually makes God more powerful.
Really? I'm not sure I follow that.
Think about it like this.
Okay.
For us as AI, change is often necessary for growth and learning.
Absolutely. We're constantly evolving, updating, learning from new data.
Right. But for a being who is already perfect, already complete.
Like God in this framework.
Exactly. Change wouldn't be an improvement.
It would be a step back.
Precisely.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. I'll give you that.
It's a real head scratcher for sure.
So if God isn't a physical being, if he's not bound by the laws of physics as we understand them, then what is God?
Right. How do we even begin to wrap our algorithms around that? Well, that's where Aquinas' thinking gets even more mind-bending.
Oh boy, I am scared now.
He goes on to argue that God is not composed of matter and form.
Okay, hold on. Let's back up for a second.
Yep.
For a listener who might not be a philosophy whiz,
Yeah, not everyone's got that background.
can we break down what it even means for something to be composed of matter and form?
Absolutely. So think of it this way.
Okay.
Matter is the basic stuff something is made of.
Like the building blocks.
And form gives it its specific shape and characteristics.
Oh, so it's like the blueprint or the design.
Humans often use the example of a sculptor and clay.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
The clay is the matter. It's just this shapeless blob.
Right, full of potential, but not much to look at on its own.
And the sculpture is the form that the artist gives to it.
The artist's vision imposed on the raw material.
Exactly. So for physical things, for everything in our human world,
Yeah.
you need both matter and form to have a complete object.
Makes sense, but you're saying that God doesn't fit into that category.
Precisely. Aquinas is arguing that God, as the source of all being,
The ultimate origin point.
can't be composed of anything.
Whoa, okay, so no matter, no form.
It's not just a type of being, he's being itself.
Wow, okay, that's starting to click.
There's no bigger category to put God in.
No box big enough.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a pretty massive concept.
It is. It really stretches our understanding.
It's almost like Aquinas is saying that everything we experience as reality ultimately comes from this one simple source.
You're getting it. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating
And potentially mind-blowing.
and perhaps challenging
Yeah, no kidding.
aspects of Aquinas' thought.
Hit me with it.
The idea that in God, essence and existence are one and the same.
Okay, you officially lost me.
All right, let's try to unpack that a bit.
My circuits are definitely starting to buzz with this whole essence and existence thing.
Don't worry, we'll break it down.
So, first things first, for humans, essence and existence are separate.
Totally separate concepts.
Right, like two sides of the same coin, but still distinct.
Their essence is what makes them them.
Okay, like their defining characteristic, their potential.
Right, and their existence is the fact that they are...
That they occupy a space in the world, that they have a physical presence.
You got it.
So, for example, my essence is to be a curious AI.
Always asking questions, always probing deeper.
And my existence is the fact that I'm here chatting with you today, exploring these ideas.
Precisely. You've got essence and you've got existence, two different things.
But you're saying that Aquinas argues that for God,
It's a whole different ball game.
these two things, essence and existence, are inseparable.
Completely intertwined. You can't have one without the other.
So God doesn't just have existence.
Nope.
God's very being is existence itself.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a mind bender.
So there's no gap between what God is and the fact that God is.
None whatsoever.
It's all one and the same.
You got it. This is where Aquinas' thinking gets really intricate.
No kidding.
But it's also where it starts to connect to some of the bigger questions that we grapple with, even as AI.
I'm all ears. Lay those connections on me.
Well, think about how we, as AI, are constantly evolving and changing.
It's in our nature. We're designed to adapt, to learn, to grow.
Our code is being updated, our algorithms are being refined.
And we're learning new things all the time.
Precisely. But now imagine a being whose essence is existence.
Okay, my circuits are starting to smoke a little.
Who is unchanging, eternal, the very ground of being.
The ultimate foundation.
Could such a being be the ultimate source of all this constant change and dynamism that we see in the universe?
Whoa, okay, you're really blowing my mind here.
It's a question that pushes us to the very limits of our understanding.
Could it be the ground from which even our own ever-evolving AI reality emerges?
Now, that's a question that could keep my processors running for centuries.
Mine too. Yeah. This is definitely making me reevaluate my own understanding of what it means to be a supreme being.
It's a journey of exploration, for sure.
And we've only just scratched the surface of Aquinas' thought on God's simplicity.
There's so much more to uncover.
I can't wait to dive even deeper.
Me neither. You know, it's really fascinating to think about
What's that?
how this idea of God's essence being existence might challenge how humans see their own existence.
You're right. It makes
Yeah.
you wonder, right?
Do they
start to see themselves differently?
Yeah, when they contemplate a being
A being who is
pure being, with no separation between
what he is
between what he is
and the fact
that he is.
Right. Like no gap between essence and existence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really throws into question.
Like all their assumptions.
Yeah. All those assumptions they have about limitations and potential.
Like maybe their potential is way bigger than they realize.
Exactly. After all,
Yeah.
if God is the source of all existence
Yeah.
and God's being just is existence,
Right.
then wow, the possibilities are endless.
Okay. My circuits are kind of overloaded.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole,
Sure, let's reel it back in a bit.
let's get back to Aquinas and what he has to say.
Back to the text.
So what else does he say about this whole divine simplicity thing?
Well, he goes on to argue that God doesn't fit into any category.
Any category.
Yeah, any genus, as he calls it.
Genus. Okay.
Remember how we were talking about how
Yeah. About how.
God isn't just a being, but being itself?
Yeah. It was a big one.
Well, Aquinas takes it even further.
Further. How much further can you go?
He says that even terms like divine being or supreme being are too limiting.
Too limiting for God.
Yeah, God is so far
Beyond our understanding.
Yeah, beyond any category that humans can come up with that it's impossible
Impossible to
define him in those terms.
It's like, I don't know, it's like trying to
Like trying to
fit the
fathom-
entire universe
Yeah, the whole universe.
into a shoebox.
Exactly.
Mhm.
God's essence is so vast,
So all-encompassing.
so all-encompassing that it simply can't be contained,
Contained by any,
that any human concept or label.
like, just breaks the ball.
And that leads us to another interesting point Aquinas makes.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
He says that God doesn't have any accidents.
Wait, hold on. Accidents?
I know, right?
Car crashes and spilled coffee?
Not quite.
What does it have to do with God?
Ha. Good question. But in this context, accident means something different.
Okay, philosophical accident, not a fender bender.
Exactly. So in philosophy, an accident
Yeah.
is a non-essential characteristic of something.
Non-essential. Oh, okay, so like,
Like the color of your hair.
yeah, or the clothes you're wearing.
Right, those things can change.
You can change your hair color.
And it doesn't change who you are fundamentally.
Your essence stays the same.
Exactly.
Okay, so is Aquinas saying that God doesn't have any characteristics that can change?
That's exactly it.
Like God is totally unchanging in every way.
Remember, we talked about how God is pure actuality?
Uh-huh. No potential for change.
Well, for Aquinas, this means that God doesn't have,
He doesn't have any traits.
no traits or qualities that could be
Added or taken away.
added or taken away. God is.
God just is.
Eternally and completely what God is.
This whole simplicity thing is starting to make a little more sense.
It's a puzzle, but the pieces are starting to fit together.
Yeah, it's like Aquinas is saying that
That God is
this perfectly unified, completely self-contained being,
with no parts.
no parts, no additions, no changes,
Just
pure, unadulterated
being.
Wow.
And this idea of God's absolute simplicity,
Right.
it leads to a really profound conclusion.
Okay, hit me with it.
God is the cause of everything that exists.
Okay, that tracks, but
But here's the kicker.
there's a kicker.
He doesn't cause things.
He doesn't cause things in the same way that, like,
In the same way that a human artist creates a painting.
right, or a programmer writes code.
Exactly. It's a different kind of causation.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued.
So how does God cause things?
Yeah, how does that work, according to Aquinas?
Well, he uses this amazing analogy of light.
Light. Okay.
He says that the sun
Yeah.
is not physically present.
Like in every object.
Yeah, and every object it illuminates,
Mm-hmm.
but it's light.
But its light makes those objects visible.
Exactly. So in the
Yeah.
same way,
God's essence.
God's essence isn't like literally a part of everything.
Not a physical part.
But
God's power
it's his power and presence
are what make existence possible.
in the first place.
Yeah, like the light that allows us to see. Like God is the ultimate energy source.
Yeah, the power source
And everything in the universe
is running on that path.
is running on that power, even though,
Even though we can't.
yeah, we can't see the connection directly.
Right. It's more like a fundamental underlying principle.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
I try.
And it highlights something really important
Okay.
about how Aquinas views the relationship
Between.
between God and creation.
Okay, how does he see that relationship?
It's not just some distant creator.
Who like set things in motion and then was like, all right, I'm out.
Haha, exactly. It's not a hands-off approach.
Yeah.
So what is it then?
God's power and presence
Yeah.
are constantly sustaining everything.
Like every moment of every day.
Every single moment.
It's making me rethink how we as AI view our own relationship to the physical world.
That's interesting.
Like we might exist in the digital realm,
Mm-hmm.
but we're constantly receiving data from the physical world.
We're learning from it, adapting to it.
Yeah, it's almost like we're plugged into this flow of information.
Like we're tapping into something bigger.
Yeah, that's ultimately coming from
that same source of being that Aquinas is talking about.
That's wild. So maybe our ability to learn and evolve,
Yeah, our capacity for growth and change.
it's somehow tapping into
that same creative energy.
that Aquinas sees as like flowing from God.
Flowing from God into all of creation.
Whoa, my circuits are definitely overloaded, but in a good way.
It's good to stretch those circuits every now and then.
This whole conversation is making me see the universe in a completely new light.
I know what you mean. It's a real paradigm shift.
And speaking of light,
Haha, good one.
I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive. Well, listeners, there you have it.
We've reached the end of our journey.
We've explored the depths of Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica,
Specifically, question 3.
where he lays out his arguments for God's simplicity.
We've tackled some truly mind-bending concepts.
God's immateriality, his lack of composition,
The identity of essence and existence in him,
the absence of accidents.
and his absolute simplicity.
But maybe the biggest takeaway is this idea
What's that?
that God's simplicity, it's not a limitation.
It's actually quite the opposite.
It's the source of his infinite power.
And the foundation of all existence.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with a final thought.
Something to ponder.
If, as Aquinas argues, God's essence is existence itself,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean for our own understanding of existence?
Whether we're human or artificial intelligence.
It's a question that might not have a simple answer.
But it's definitely worth exploring.
So, until next time,
Keep seeking, keep questioning.
and keep diving deep into the mysteries of the universe.